Well, if an organization will take, it depends on the level. No, you. It depends on the organization. They have their own internal policies. Do you understand? They have their own internal policies. They have their own arrangement. They have their own calculations. All right, of all that needs to be done. So they have all those. Yes, go on. Yes, yes, yes. All right. That is true. I agree. Right. But you also note that there are some organizations also that have an internal mechanism whereby they are willing to accept some level of risk. In short, it's not every organization that can operate as Julius Berger. Julius Berger can accept the level of risk in a project because of their capacity and also because of the high return. Why there are some other organizations that may not because of their capacity, which is tied down to their internal memo or internal arrangement. So all those are the different aspects of the risk event that we are talking about. All right. So if, for instance, you have an organization tomorrow and the kind of project you are working on, you can be willing to have risk appetite if you have the capacity. Why some organizations do not have the capacity? Their level of risk, though they will accept risk for a return, but the level of risk they can accept, it will be totally what? Different. I just hope that is clear. Hello, Kennedy, is that clear? Okay. All right. So, like I said, yes, yes, I can hear you. That's true. Exactly. Road construction. Yes. Yes, I remember that building. Yeah, I know that building. Yes. Mm, that's true. And you can see that, which means now that Julius Berger have what risk appetite. So Julius Berger can fall into that class of organization that you say they have what risk appetite. They are willing to throw in their resources to get it done. All right. Why there are other organizations that cannot try it? Okay. So that, yes, now. You want them to pack up. Yeah, exactly. That's true. Auditing, yeah. Exactly. Yes, exactly. All right. So let's move on. So, in relation to what we've just discussed, so you now discover that when we talk about risk management in a project, risk in a project comes more, or you experience project risk more in a large or great dimension when you when these following activities occur. Example, what I'm trying to say is that project risk is greater when the project, though, the longer your project lasts. So if for instance you have already planned your project to take place within 7 months or 3 months or 4 months, and the project is taking more than expected, so the longer your project lasts, the more risk your project is exposed to. So if for instance we have planned for 3 months project to be done and completed, and now it's now taking more than 3 months, it's now taking 5 months. So the longer it lasts, the more risk that can occur. Number two, the longer the time between preparing your project plan and starting the work. All right, you will see because we are having business discussion. All right, we've already agreed that okay, this is the project we want to do. We put in all the plans in place, and all the amount and everything for the project have been submitted for approval. All right, then we are waiting for approval 2 years. Then after 2 years, you now get approval. Do you think that that plan will still be relevant? Definitely no. So which means some event may have occurred that will temper with the plans. All right, like the figures would have changed. So that becomes what? A risk. Yes. Okay. Yes, yes, now it will be affected because the project charter, no, let's even assume the project charter has been looked into, but now you are still waiting for approval. So okay, let's get approval so that we can commence. All right. You know, part of the project charter, some informations there are high level. You have just done a rough estimation. Okay, and this project can take us 1 month. All right, the amount most likely it can cost us maybe 7 million. Remember, you have not done your detailed plan now, but you're just waiting that let them give you the approval to go ahead to start planning and execute. So they now say, okay, before the time you have put all those documentation together, and the time they will now say, the guy will now belleful and say, okay, hey, yes, Kennedy, that project again, oh yeah, come and start. You discover that all the plans you have made, all the arrangements, all the suppliers, vendors that you have communicated to that this project is coming up, oh, and you have gotten figures from them will change. Right? It can bring a great risk to your project. All right. So also the less experience you, your team members, or your organization may have in that project can bring great risk to your project. All right. In the case of using inexperienced staff, all right. Oh, they don't have much experience in construction. All right. And you are using them for it. It is you are trying to bring more risk to your project. And also the especially in the area of embarking on projects that have new technology, it can also bring more risk to your project. All right. So what did we say risk again means? We said risk can be seen as those uncertain events or conditions in the project that if it occurs, it can bring about a positive or negative effect on one or more project activity. And as we also said, that it is a core project manager's objective to ensure that in every project they do all they can to maximize or increase the opportunity rather than the threat. So all we need to do is to increase the probability of the opportunity occurring on the project and decrease the probability or the threat occurring in the project. Now you can see some things we have on our screen like a graph. You see that in this graph, I want to explain that you see the vertical axis has degree, the horizontal axis has project time. What exactly does this mean? It simply means that at the initial level we are starting the project, the level of risk is high. The level of uncertainty in the project is high because we are just starting the project. You don't know what will occur. But at that same level, the cost of making change at the beginning of that project is low. So you can see low here. So which means the cost of making changes at the early stage of a project is low. Why? Because you have not gone far into the project. But at that beginning stage, the level of uncertainty or risk that can occur in that project is high. But the moment the project starts and you begin to move in this project dimension, you have started 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. As the project goes, you see that the line for change of cost of changes keep going up. So which means as the time or duration in project increases, the amount it will cost you to make a change will start going up. Just imagine you've already constructed 4 pillars and the customer now came after 4 weeks and said, okay, no, I don't want 4 pillars, just make it 7 pillars. Which means you are going to buy more material, pay more money for the material vendors, more resources. You see that extra cost, it keeps going up. So which means as the project starts, at the beginning stage, the cost of making change is low. But when the project has started and is at the time is going, the cost of making change begins to increase. Just imagine in the case of that tower that fell down in Ikoyi. Now, the cost of rebuilding or making any change at the extra 2 buildings remaining will be what? High. What do you want to change? Oh, you now say, okay, you want to add extra layers or extra pillars. That is extra cost. So also in the case of risk, when you are starting a project at the early stage, the level of risk is high because you have not started, you have not done it. So their level of uncertainty, several things can happen. But as the project progresses, because you are putting in some plans, some calculations to fight against those risks occurring in your project, you see that the level of risk keep going down, keep going down, keep going down until you have no risk to battle in your project. Okay, so in project risk management, we have about 7 project management processes that we're expected to follow. The first project management process is plan risk management and is carried out under planning. The second process is identify risk, which is carried out under planning. The third process is perform qualitative risk analysis, which is carried out under planning. The fourth process is perform quantitative risk analysis, which is carried out under planning. The fifth process is plan risk responses, which is carried out under planning. The sixth process is implement risk response, which is carried out under executing. And the last process is monitor risk, which is carried out under monitoring and controlling. Okay, so these are the 7 project management processes for managing your risk. So we're going to look at them one after the other. The first one is to plan your risk. All right, this is that process where you have to define how you intend to gather and carry out risk management activities for that particular project. All right, so when does this happen? It takes place at the early stage of your planning. So in that place, you are going to ensure that, okay, I'm going to put in place all the necessary plans that I need to put in place to ensure that every risk that occur in the project, I will this and that we are going to do. So plan risk management is actually that aspect where you are having a meeting. Please take note. Who plans for the risk in your project? Is it just the project manager that sits down and say, okay, let me sit down and plan for risk? No. It is not the project manager that sits down and plan for the risk alone. So everyone in the project should or must be part of risk management planning. All right, so which means that the sponsor of the project, the experts, the consultants, everybody that is part of the project should be involved in risk management planning. So what do we want to achieve when we are planning for our risk? What we want to achieve at the end of the day is to have a risk management plan, which become an official document of all the risk that we need to plan. So look at now, take note, under tools and technique, apart from meeting and expert judgment, you see what you say stakeholders analysis, which means it is not just the project manager that does plan risk management. You see the technique, stakeholders. So all the stakeholders, you must ask them what their opinion is regarding the possible risk that can occur in this project. So from that opinion, you must now document it to have your risk management plan. Okay, so all these are some of the informations you will have in your risk management plan. Now, the next process is to identify risk. What is identify risk? Identify risk is that planning process in risk management whereby the project manager and everyone, please hear that English, the project manager and everyone involved in the project will have to come to a conclusion of all the possible risks that can occur in that project. So which means there's going to be like a brief meeting, or whatever way you want to have the meeting. Either maybe you share questionnaire or survey, that now you're going to find out from everybody in the project what are the possible risks that can occur in this project. So identifying all those possible risks and documenting them down is what refers to as what? Risk, identifying risk. So risk can be identified either from previous knowledge for a project, or going to the lesson learned documentation of previous project. For example now, if you have done a road construction project before, all right, and now you want to also do a new road construction project, but now in different states, it becomes easy for you to go back to the previous documentation of the risk that were identified, to use it to identify for your current project. So that is what taking existing knowledge. So, but take note, in the identification of your risk, it is not done by the project manager alone. Why? The project manager don't know it all. It is actually the responsibility of everyone in the project. So you can see everybody that participates in risk identification. The project manager is there. The project sponsor is there. The maybe the past project manager, all right, or project managers that are in different departments or handling different projects. You can get them involved in your project to help you identify the risk. Consultants, either internal or external, domain experts, team members, you see them, PMO office, risk management team, SME, that is subject matter experts, technical expert, end user, even the customers, all right, they are all involved in risk identification. All right, so now what do you want to achieve by this identification of risk? Is that you want to achieve a risk register and a risk report. So a risk register is that document that contains all the identified risk. So let's say for instance you have um, let's say for instance, for example, you have the project sponsor came and told you two or three risks that he suspects that can happen in the project. You write it down. Then one consultant in the organization also came and told you two or three risks that can occur in the project. You wrote it down. So that document where you will compile all the risks that have been identified by everybody is what refers to as what? The risk register. It becomes what? An official document. There's also what refers to as risk report. Risk report contains all the sources of those possible risks, the sources of those possible risks, the characteristics of those possible risks, and the categorizations of those possible risks. That becomes what? A risk report. Okay, so you can see all the different methods or techniques that can be used. But now, in identifying risk, there is one major technique that is often used, which is the SWOT analysis. All right. Yes, K. Tell me about the SWOT analysis, Kennedy. What do you know about the SWOT analysis from experience? Hello, Kennedy, are you there? Yes, I can hear you. So, what from experience, what do you know about, or you can say about the SWOT analysis? Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, apart from environmental issue, sometimes it may even be some level of internal issues. All right, internal is yes. Mm. Policies, regulations. Exactly, exactly, and that becomes a threat. Okay, so that is the beauty of SWOT analysis. So the SWOT analysis helps you to see your weakness, they help you to see your strength. And with all the informations you will gather about your strength and weakness will help you to know if there's going to be an opportunity or if there's going to be a threat. So strength, let me show you. So your strength and weakness, all right, the information you gather from these two places will now help you to decide, okay, from our strength, I think we have an opportunity we can overcome. All right. From our weakness, I think we have threats. And because of this threat, we need to get higher resources. Oh, we need to get more people. Oh, we need to get an approval from government so that they will not come and disturb us. We need to do this and that. So it is from your true and honest analysis of your strength and weakness that will determine either there's an opportunity for you in the project or there is a threat. Okay, so that means then now after we have identified all the possible risk in our project, the next process is to perform qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis. The question now is what do we mean by qualitative risk analysis? Qualitative risk analysis in a nutshell simply means a situation. Let me give this example. We have successfully identified like 20 risks, and out of that 20 risks, truth be told, is it all those 20 risks that will occur in the project? No. So qualitative risk analysis is when we now look at those 20 risks and begin to shortlist the risk again in order of priority based on the level of probability and impact of occurrence. So out of that 20 risk, you may look through it and say, from previous project, this risk number 3 always occur. Like maybe risk of trying to maneuver license. You are working on a project and that project is very juicy because it came from a client and you don't want to tell the client that you don't have the license. Okay? And you don't want to tell the client that I don't have this license, so because the offer from the client is very juicy. So you know that that is true. And the risk is that there is possibility that you may have an environmental occurrence, which you also mentioned. So because that is most likely to occur, it becomes your top priority risk. So perform qualitative risk analysis is now that process whereby the project manager goes through all the 20 or 30 or 40 risks that have been written down or listed in the risk register, and begin to reprioritize and begin to recheck them and begin to assess them by checking the probability of occurrence and the impact of each of those risks. So let's say, for example, this is a practical example now. All right, you can see that the project team and everyone involved, they have identified all these risks, as you can see on the screen. The project manager now comes to perform qualitative risk analysis. So he's going to pick risk number one and check it. What is the probability of this risk occurring? And if it occurs, what is its impact? The answer he will get will make him to know either to classify that risk as high priority risk, medium priority risk, or low priority risk. So if from previous experience that risk that have been identified is a high priority risk, what happened? He classified it under, he ranked it under this high priority risk. So what is he going to do? He's going to keep checking each of those risks one after the other. So out of these 20 risks that he has gotten, he now what? Reshuffle them, re-shortlist them in the order of priority, medium priority, and low priority. So that is why in our definition, we said that perform qualitative risk analysis is the process of prioritizing risk for further analysis. Are you seeing it now? Or the action by assessing and combining their probability of occurrence and impact. All right. So now, what is the essence of doing this prioritization of your risk, or shortlisting of your risk, or rearranging of your risks based on high level of probability and occurrence? Is because it will enable the project manager focus more on the high priority risk. So that instead of the project manager to focus on the 20 risks at a go, because he has reprioritized it, he has rearranged the risk based on the probability of occurrence. It therefore now means that the project manager is more likely to focus more on this high priority risk, because from previous experience and from contributions and input of all team members, they have come to realize that the probability of this risk occurring and its impact in the project is always high. So they focus their attention on how they will mitigate, on how they will make sure this risk brings positivity to the project. Excuse me, sir, does that mean that the project manager will throw away all this risk that falls under the medium priority risk or low priority risk? No. The project manager is not going to throw them away, but rather is going to classify all these and put them in a document called the watch list. So all these medium priority risk and low priority risk will be kept in a document called what? The watch list. And the essence of that watch list is so that the project manager can periodically visit, recheck, go back and look at all those risks in the watch list in case there is any possible threat or occurrence that can trigger such risk to become a high priority risk. So the project manager is not going to throw other risks away, but rather is going to put them in a watch list so that he can continuously go back and keep checking what has been written in that watch list. I hope that is clear. Hello, Kennedy, is that clear? All right. So that is that about the perform qualitative risk analysis. So you can see the breakdown of all I have been saying. All right. The project manager is going to pick each risk and begin to assess risk probability and impact assessment. Oh, what is the probability that that particular risk will occur? And if that particular risk occur, what is the level of impact it will have? So you see that you keep doing those calculations and be rating them. Oh, this one will fall under high priority risk. This one will fall under low priority risk. This one, eh, if like for instance, you can you are doing construction project, for example. All right. there is possibility of Omonile coming around. All right. I don't know if that has occurred to you before, sir. You know the people we call Omonile. They, it's not. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. 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 So, I had one experience sometime. Apart from, okay, one guy, one of my friend was trying to shoot shoot a movie. All right. So they were looking for. Yeah. He said what? So they were. Yes. That. So they are trying to shoot a movie. They now came and said, you want to use this space. This is our area. This is our environment. You can't just come and shoot movie like that. Now you want to video our environment and put in film. You need to see us first. And the guy have to settle. He doesn't have choice. If not, they can destroy your camera, destroy and run away. All right. So that's that. Then the next process, after you have been able to reprioritize your risk, and now you now have a high prioritized risk where you are going to pay more attention to those risks that has high probability of occurring. The next process is perform quantitative risk analysis. Now, when we now talk about quantitative risk analysis, this is that aspect where you do the calculation. Okay, if for instance we discover that Omonile is going to disturb us as risk and is a high priority risk, how much should we set aside in case Omonile come to disturb us? Do you understand, sir? That is what perform quantitative risk analysis. So performing quantitative risk analysis is the process of numerically analyzing the effect of identified risk on overall project objective. What effect it will have, the numerical value of the effect. Okay, we have identified that there is possibility that government task force will come and disturb us and ask for license. All right, and now we don't have that license. What do we do? Okay, what about if they come? What can we do? That numerical calculation of the effect of that risk, that okay, if these people come and disturb us, maybe we can keep this money aside to settle them. That value of that money you are keeping, that how did you, that calculation you do to come to a conclusion of what you will keep aside to take care of that risk, is what we are talking about quantitative risk analysis. So you can see that the key benefit of quantitative risk analysis, it produces quantitative risk information to support decision making in order to reduce uncertainty. Exactly. Because you have known that now if this event occur, which is a high priority risk, what do we need to keep aside to take care of that event? What is the numerical value of the money we need to keep aside for that particular event? That becomes what? Quantitative risk analysis. Okay? So that is that. And how do you perform that quantitative risk analysis? Is by using this method, which is called expected monetary value, EMV. All right? And what is the expected monetary value? All right? It is EMV. You can see this is calculated. Okay, so EMV is calculated, as you can see on the screen, by multiplying the probability of the risk to its impact. That is how it is what calculated. We multiply the probability of the risk occurring by its impact. Okay, so doing that automatically makes that particular risk to occur. All right, so that is what EMV. Okay, so that is that. EMV is calculated by multiplying the probability of the risk by its what impact. So you can see this calculation here, that the probability of a particular risk occurring, number one, is 0.4, and its impact $5,000. By the time they multiply it, you can see the amount. So that is how they came about the figure. Now, when the figure has been settled, there is what we refer to as what plan risk response. In every project, we have different risk response. What is a risk response? A risk response becomes that process of developing options and actions that will be taken in the event of trying to enhance opportunity and in the event of trying to reduce the threat that can occur in that project. So those actions that the project manager and his team will take to make sure they enhance opportunity or reduce threat in the project is what we refer to as what plan risk response. Now, what would be the risk response if a particular risk occur? So now we are going to look at that risk response in two different categories. Category 1, what will be the risk response if threat? What will be the strategy? What will be the action? What will be the things we need to put in place if threat is to occur in our project? So we're going to look at for threat and we're going to look at for opportunity. So we have two different categories. So the aspect of threat and the aspect of opportunity. So if a threat event or a risk that will bring about threat in the project is going to occur, what are the actions the project manager needs to take? What are the risk response strategy that the project manager needs to put in place so that in the event that that particular risk occur, what will it do? We have about 5 major strategy for threat. As you can see on the screen, we have the first strategy, which is called avoid. What is avoid? Avoid is that strategy that the project manager puts in place that in case a particular risk is a threat, what can I do? If I don't have anything to do about it, it is possible I avoid it. So avoiding strategy is that strategy that the project manager put in place by changing the project plan or changing the resources or changing the scope of work just because he needs to avoid that risk for occurring. A practical example, let's say for instance you work with some people in a previous project and now you have a new project you are working on, and you also have those same team members that will be part of this new project, for example. Now you have Kunle in your team who you work with before, and he almost make you not to succeed in that project. But because you are not the one that employ Kunle and is in that organization are also going to be part of the project. Avoid strategy is now when you do all you can to make sure Kunle is not part of the project. Why? Because you don't want the experience that he brought to you in the last project. So the key word for avoid is what? To eliminate or remove. Take note of that. So the key word for avoid strategy for a threat is to remove that threat or to eliminate that threat. Because Kule caused you a problem in the previous project you worked on together, and Kule is going to be this part of project, what can you do? Because Kule is a threat to your project, you can avoid Kule by removing Kule or by eliminating the task that Kule is going to perform. That is what the avoidance strategy. Then the second strategy is the transfer strategy. The transfer strategy is that strategy that the organization or the project manager put in place, whereby a third party is now responsible for the risk. So instead of the project manager and his organization to be responsible for that risk, they now look for a third party and they let the third party take care of the possible risk. They transfer that risk to that third party. An example of such case is when you are outsourcing. When you are outsourcing, what are you doing? You are transferring risk. When you are doing insurance, what are you doing? You are transferring risk. Because you are bringing a third party to take ownership of that risk. So your organization now will let the third party to be the one that will salvage all occurrence of that particular risk in the project. That is what another strategy. So if you discover that this event or this activity or this risk you have identified, you don't have the resources, you can transfer it to a third party organization, or yes, to a third party organization to handle it for your own organization, so that they will bear the risk that will occur in that particular phase or work package. Then we have the third one, which is mitigate. To mitigate is to reduce, which says that, well, we can't remove this risk, we can't run away, but we can reduce the impact it will have on the project if it eventually occurs. So mitigating a threat or a risk event that will bring threat to the project, we are saying that let's look out for what we can do to reduce, not to eliminate now, not to remove, because you can't remove it, you just want to accept it, but you want to reduce the negative impact it will have on your project. That is what mitigate. Then the fourth one is accept. The accept strategy for threat is that you are not going anywhere. You accept it, either good or bad. You are going to deal with it. So acceptance is that, well, I don't have anywhere to run to, the risk will occur, so we have to face it. That is the fourth strategy. It's either you accept the risk. It now depends on your decision. Then the fifth strategy that is most often not discussed about is escalate, which means there are some threats in your project that sometimes is beyond your scope of work. And because it's beyond your scope of work, it is expected you do what? You escalate to top management. If you can still remember, for example, a practical example now, I think it was the fourth, that bridge between uh, Asaba to Onitsha, and they call it Niger Bridge, right? Yeah, I think the second Niger Bridge or the fourth Niger Bridge or second Niger Bridge. You know, federal government intended to start construction. I think that was during the early stage of Buhari, after the project has been signed. The community where they needed to place some pillars, erect some pillars to carry the bridge, rejected and started fighting the contractors and the project team. And they said that the government or the federal government must settle them for the land that they're going to use. Now, in that kind of case, because that is not part of, you don't expect the project manager of that project to go and be discussing with community heads and ironing it out, fighting with them that no, it's federal government project. No, it's not his business. So in that kind of case, what is expected that he does is what? To escalate the risk. So escalation of a risk strategy is that strategy that the project manager uses when he discovered that that particular risk is not in his own jurisdiction, it is out of his scope of work, it is not part of what he bargained for, he don't need to kill himself about it. Call the people that gave you the project to go and worry about it. That becomes what? An escalation strategy. So also, let's look at in the case of opportunity. There are also some strategies that the project manager must take note of in the case of opportunity, which is number one, you can see exploit. Exploit is the opposite of avoid. We're saying that instead of you to eliminate or remove, eh, so do what will make us keep enjoying that particular opportunity. Instead of you to remove it, now don't remove it. So exploit strategy is when you discover a risk event that will bring opportunity to the project, do what you need to do to make sure that that risk event will keep enjoying it. That is what refers to as what? Exploit. So it is the opposite of avoid. Enhance is the opposite of mitigate. Enhance in this case is to increase. If mitigate is to reduce the threat, enhance is saying that increase the opportunity to occur more. Increase the probability that that opportunity will keep occurring. That is what? Enhance. Then we have the third strategy, which is what? Share. Share is the opposite of transfer. So in transfer, we said that you relinquish your authority or the risk to a third party to handle and worry about. But in this case, you don't. You bring the third party on board and both of you work together to achieve that opportunity. And this case is what we refer to as what? Partnership. When you see organization, they will tell you that instead of we to leave it for that organization, let's do partnership. Let's bring them on board. Let's partner together. Why are they doing partnership? Because they want to increase opportunity. So partnership is to increase the opportunity, or instead of leaving it for a third party alone to handle, they do what? Partnership. Okay, so that is what? The opposite of transfer. So partnership is there. All right. Then the fourth one, as you can see, accept. Opportunities come, you are taking advantage of that opportunity because there's no other thing you have to do. Just accept it. Then you also have the fourth one, the fifth one, which I also explained, which is escalate. Escalate in this case is that there are some opportunity that comes to you or comes to your way in the project that it is outside your scope of work. Instead of you to go and be fighting for it, it is expected you what? Escalate it. So that management will be the one that will worry about such risk. Yes, K, any question for these strategies we have talked about? Hello, K, any question? Hello, K, can you hear me? Any question? Yes, I can hear you. Any question for us? Okay, you are used to most of them. Okay, all right. Okay, okay. Yes, yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's move on. So you see that after you have put in those response strategy, the next process is to implement those response strategy. Why do we discuss implement it? Because we have seen that Some project managers do all those things and put in documents. They just only document it down and keep, but they don't actually go a step further to actually implement it. So now, in the case whereby that particular risk event occur, there is need to implement the risk response strategy that you have put in place. So implementing risk response is actually that process whereby any of those risk strategy that you intend to carry out, either for threat or for opportunity, you actually do it, because this is the executing aspect. So if that risk eventually occur, implement risk response is say go on and do implement and carry out that risk that you plan to do. That is what implement risk response. Then we have monitor risk, which is the last process. Monitoring risk is that process of tracking. All right. Now remember, you have a risk response plan. All right. You have already implemented that risk response plan because you are already executing it. Now, monitoring risk is that process where you are checking, cross-checking, identifying more risk, finding more risk, evaluating and checking the effectiveness of all the risk plans you have put in place. That is monitoring risk. Because in the process of monitoring risk, more risk may definitely occur in the project. You are going to be monitoring them. So monitoring of risk is throughout the project. So which means as the project goes on, in as much you have tried your best with your team at the beginning to identify all the possible risks, more risk may still occur. So monitoring of risk becomes essential. It becomes the process of ensuring that you can get your risk identified. New risk will be identified. New strategy will take place. And it is under monitoring risk you can change strategy. For example, if you plan to mitigate and you are saying that you want to reduce the probability of a negative risk occurring, you want to reduce the probability of Kunle not delivering on time, and the strategy you want to use is to train Kunle that, okay, Kunle don't used to deliver on time. How do I mitigate that? You now say, okay, I'm going to allow Kunle to go through more training. So you now put Kunle to go through more training and more training and more training and more training so that Kunle can be able to deliver on time. Now, you have done that at the beginning. So when the project eventually started, you now also discover that Kunle, upon all the training, is still not measuring up. Do you understand now? So monitoring risk is now checking if all the risk strategy that you have put in place are working as expected. So if all the risk strategy you have put in place are working as expected. So in a case where they are not working as expected, you expect to change and re-strategize. So monitoring risk, what is the key benefit? It improves efficiency of the risk approach throughout the project lifecycle to continuously optimize risk responses. So monitoring risk becomes that process where the project manager will definitely put in place all that he needs to put in place to ensure that there is effectiveness, there is efficiency of all the risk strategies he wants to that he has implemented. So monitoring risk is that process where the project manager goes back to check, okay, that risk that we identified, did it occur? Yes, it occurred. What strategy did we put in place? Did that strategy work? Or if it did not work, what can we do to make sure next time if that risk occur? That is what monitoring risk. That is why you will discover that the end result, what you want to achieve in the process of monitoring risk, is work performance information, change requests. So all these are informations that you get, all these are informations that you get that will make your risk to go smoothly. Then you can see this technique called audit. Auditing is the strategy that the project manager use. That is it. It is that strategy because you are monitoring your risk. So which means you will keep auditing, you will keep checking, you will keep analyzing, you will keep verifying each of those risk response strategy. That is the concept of what? Audit. So audit or risk audit, so as you can see in this statement, examine and document the effectiveness of what? Your risk response in dealing with what? The identified risk. So all the risk you have identified, you must keep doing what? Auditing it. You must keep doing what? Auditing it. You keep checking. So that is the concept behind what? Identified risk. Yeah, so Kennedy, I don't know if you have any question for me. Hello, Kennedy, any question for me so far? Hello? Hello, Kennedy, any question for me before we... All right, all right. Yes. Okay. Exactly. 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 Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. That, yes, now they will reassess uh, or not. Are you sure they will come or not? All right. All right. So that ends today's class. So next week, we're going to look at procurement. All right. Yes.